Joining us on the phone from Sioux City, Iowa, Tommy's brother, Johnnie. Johnnie Bolin, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Scott. How's everyone doing?
Everyone's doing fine here. I was talking to Trace Keene about Bolin Fest, and really an interesting little gathering. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the origins of that?
It started in '84. We tried a couple things on Tommy's anniversary on December 4th, playing in memory, and it was kind of a gloomy type situation, because of his passing. So we thought we would try it on his birthday, maybe be a little bit more uplifting. So we started having it every year right around his birthday, August 1st, and we did it for 6, 7, 8 years in Sioux City, Iowa, and it's a local bar. And then, like I was telling you, Scott, we got the Tommy Bolin Archive started, and it's based out of Denver. So we moved it out to Denver because there's a lot of Tommy's fans out there. Most of his adult life out in Colorado. He left Sioux City when he was 15, so he lived in Boulder till he was 24, and so we moved out to Denver, and it was a great success out there too. But we just decided to bring it back to Sioux City, where Tommy was born. This last year we had a tribute band. A lot of the guys that played with Tommy came back to play it, and then of course we have like 3 or 4 other local bands. But Buddy Miles has done it. Black Oak, that's the band I play with Jim Dandy. We've done it every year except this year. Jim was a little bit under the weather, so he couldn't make it up. So we're always included in that too. Glenn Hughes has done it, with us before, and it's always turned out really well, and it's a lot of fun.
Sounds great. Next year, I believe you're scheduled for August 4th, 2007.
August 4th, that's what we have down on the calendar.
You played with Tommy at the Jet Bar on more than one occasion. Is that correct?
He would come back whenever he could, really, but it's more like, like occasions. Like he had some time off during Thanksgiving. He had some time off during Christmas. That would be the most opportune time to come back. So we'd always, throw together a gig wherever we were playing. I played with a guitar player named John Bartle. We did some records together, a band we had called DVC, and he had grown up with Tommy. So Tommy just said, make sure, I come back, because, he just didn't want to hang around the house. He wanted to play. So we always get together, and wherever the club would be, a couple times we played a place called the Ozone, and the last couple of years he was around, we did the Jet Bar, and we got a CD released on that, live at the Jet Bar, on the Tommy Bolin Archives. So it's a thing we, did when Tommy would come back and have shits and giggles. It was just a really fun time. Just, Tommy loved, after the tour with, Purple and whoever it was, James Gang, and it was kind of fun just to come back to a bar.
Yeah, we should talk. We should talk about that aspect. I mean, for those we're huge Tommy Bolin fans, but for those radio listeners who aren't as familiar with Tommy Bolin, maybe you could give us a little background on the history of Tommy. When he came out to Boulder with Zephyr, right? That was the band.
He came out to Boulder with Zephyr. He actually went out because he was getting thrown out of school. His hair was too long. That's really a true story. And he kept going back, and they kept saying, I got to be shorter and shorter. Anyway, he about had it. He just, my mom and dad gave him the okay. So he hitchhiked out to Denver, and there's a story in there that maybe someday Jeff Cook can tell us on the air. But it's they just heard this about this kid that could play the guitar like all get out, and they auditioned Tommy, and that was earlier. It was Zephyr, but they were called American Standard.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, they changed the name to Zephyr, and then they were lucky enough to get a record deal, and they were with ABC and then Warner Brothers. And then
they put out how many albums?
They put out 2 albums with Tommy.
Okay.
Then they went on to do some more recording, but without Tommy. They had a guy named Jock Bartley from Firefall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He's always wanted his own band, so he kept quitting these bands to start his own band. And so he had a band called Energy. Joe Walsh was playing around Colorado. He's living there at that time because of Caribou and all that stuff like that. So he had known Tommy. Tommy was backing his band up, Barnstorm, with his band Energy. And I guess James Gang had called Joe and said, is there any guitar players out there? And, of course, Joe recommended Tommy. So he did 2 albums with the James Gang.
And those were?
Bang and Miami.
Okay.
Had some good success with that. And then, again, he wanted the Tommy Bolin band, so he quit the James Gang and started Energy again,
Mm-hmm.
And then trying to, struggle and get a record deal. And it was around this era of solo artists like Peter Frampton, Steve Miller, Gary Wright. So there's a lot of male acts out there, and they
all of whom were
Tommy sing with the James Gang.
Right, all of whom were sort of journeyman session musicians. All those
guys
that you mentioned.
So it was kind of the time to be signing male guitar player. That's what was
right.
kind of hitting at the time. And so when Tommy presented them with his demo, they said, well, why don't we just call it the Tommy Bolin Band? And, of course, he wanted Energy, and they said, well, no, it's time you go out on your own. So he had the same players, but it was just called Tommy Bolin. That's when he put out Teaser. And at that time, he was asked by Deep Purple to join.
And how did he get
So-
all the people? Just to backtrack for a second, how did he get all the people I mean, there's some huge names on the teaser
Well,
album.
that's kind of a neat story. That, he was doing the record with the guys that he had,
Mm-hmm.
and he was doing it, I think, at a couple different studios. But he would go around, like, there's like 4 different, like at Cherokee, there's 4 different studio rooms, and he kind of just walk around and ask these guys. And I don't know how they legally did it, but but he, if they wanted to play on his record, I mean.
So that's how he got Jan Hammer and Narada Michael Walden. And
Well, those guys, he got those. He knew Jan from playing with Billy Cobham.
okay, right from
Those
Spectrum.
guys were already scheduled to play, but guys like Phil Collins,
right.
he was doing a thing with Genesis down the different studio, and he got him in there, and then
David Sanborn.
David Sanborn was playing with Paul Butterfield,
Right.
and so he grabbed him, and David was not even.
Nobody knew who
soloist
David was at that point.
back
Yeah.
then. Prairie Prince was doing an album with the Tubes,
Right.
so he grabbed Prairie. And,
Jeff Porcaro.
Jeff, yeah, was doing a thing with Toto, so.
Yeah. So he just
I
sort
think
of
that's
walked
it,
around and
yeah.
grabbed people then, huh?
Yeah. And the second album, Private Eyes was his band. I mean, that was the
Yeah.
touring band.
Right, with Reggie
With
McBride,
Bobby Berge and
Norma Jean Bell, and so on like that. Yeah.
Gene and Reggie and
Yeah.
Mark Stein from Vanilla Fudge. So that's how those 2 albums. And when he was doing the teaser album, that's when Richie Blackmore left, and Purple grabbed him, and he couldn't really turn it down.
Right, that was a really
As
high
much as he
profile.
wanted, as much as he wanted his solo record again, Harry asked to tour with Purple, which wasn't a bad deal, I suppose, for him. And then he left Purple, and once again started the Tommy Bolin Band, and he went out with a bang.